welcome. Hello to everyone. Thank you very much for having me invited to this forum on this wonderful conference. And Laura, thank you very much for having introduced my person shortly. Actually, there wouldn't be too much to add, but the fact that I'm not a particular expert for Africa. The reason why I'm here is actually because I would like to talk and show you some of the minor steps we are underdoing in order to establish in our course of studies and our small contribution to improve the status quo, which is related to Africa, but also other regions in the world. NGU is actually a small university of applied sciences within the metropolitan area of Stuttgart. We do have about approximately 6,000 students and around 100 partner agreements with foreign universities all over the world. We host quite a huge number of foreign students also, as regular exchange students, but also as program students. Many of them, of course, are also coming from the African continent. And the NGU, our university, actually stands with all its offers and its profile for sustainability, with corresponding focal points in all the study programs. So we really try to establish the idea of sustainability in all the different programs that we actually have. Of course, if you think of my program, the program I'm responsible for, financial management, this is a little bit out of the ordinary because at least at first glance, it might seem that financial management could or will probably teach other values like profitability or profit maximization, relentless use of resources, etc. Of course, here at our university in Nuertingen, we try to prove that the opposite is actually true, and finance goes perfectly with sustainability. The other issue is, or the second characteristic of our course is internationality. So our students are actually obliged to study at least 1 year abroad, and typically at one of our partner universities. The main destinations chosen by our students are typically North America, Europe, and East Asia, not very surprisingly, of course. But today our goal is really to widen that spectrum and offer opportunities also for the other regions, the more, kind of seemingly less attractive regions. But why is that somehow difficult? If you look at the facts and why students today are actually choose their destinations, and if we look at the attractiveness of these regions, we see that students mainly look at the offering of courses, the offering of possible spare time activities. Cost is, of course, a big issue. Safety issues might be something, but probably above all, it's the reputation of the place. And with reputation, I don't really mean what you read in the news or in the mass media. I basically mean the experience of former students or us as professors who have been in places. So we are really the promoters of places. So sometimes you would be completely surprised why students prefer places and go to places all at once. And there's really a movement from one place to another just because someone is promoting the place. I remember Finland 15 years ago, 20 years ago, no one ever thought of Finland. All at once, I came back from a visit to Finland, and then, everyone wanted to go to Finland. Similar situation with Korea. And this is, of course, very, very important. Yeah. But nonetheless, if you take all these aspects I have been mentioning, of course, regions such as South America, Middle East, and of course also Africa do have some disadvantages. By the way, also East Europe. Yeah? Also East Europe is kind of difficult to sell, if you allow me this, let's say, business expression for that. Yeah, but it's much more difficult to encourage our students to go there. The question is, of course, what are our answers? So what can we do? How can we get people there? And the answer is actually that we want to get our students experience Africa and all the other regions in a maybe less extensive way, not for 1 year, but with smaller projects. So what we're doing is we do have projects with, for example, the German Jordan University. So there's an exchange, common projects, incoming students from Jordania coming to Germany. We have that with in East Europe with the Babeș-Bolyai University in Cluj, Romania, where we also support with teaching, and we established a double degree agreement. We try to have joint applications for EU grants with, in that case, with universities from the African continent. So there are different initiatives that we try to do, little steps, which hopefully encourage students to experience Africa a little bit more, and then being ambassadors for the African continent or for other of these regions I just mentioned. If we think of Africa, we have some special ideas and projects done in our finance program. We had business cases that we are working with on Togo, for example, where I had a former student of mine who's originally from Togo, who worked as an, let's say, a coach in this case, and a lecturer. We actually have lately started having some concrete study modules where students were actually working on real cases for Malawi and Uganda. For the Uganda case, students first worked in Nuertingen and as group work, and then a group of 3 students actually traveled to Uganda. That was kind of a safety issue. So it's something that I mentioned before because of the Ebola virus at that time in Congo. So the other students also had the possibility, but they were actually afraid. So this is, of course, an issue. And there, in a joint project together with the GPAD and other partners, among them there was the National Water Association in Uganda. The students actually of NGU worked together with the Ndachi University and worked on the implementation of a pilot project for a more sustainable and efficient water supply. The goal of the project was actually to find the best possible technical and financial solution for the individual pilot stations they were investigating there. Eventually they came up with a financial model, an Excel sheet, if you want so, that could help to analyze the water stations in more than 250 cities and support investment decisions. One thing that I would really like to emphasize here is that we're not talking about, let's say, a social project. It's really about profitability. So it really fits into the study program. And I think this is really fundamental, that we're not always talking about social projects, but that especially our students understand that you can make business, not in a mean way, but business, sustainable business is possible with Africa. We have to be a little bit more open-minded.
Just want to give you sort of a chance to wrap up before we have to move on.
Okay. I would, if you allow me to say that, the nice thing is that we really see a lot of advantages for all sides, not only for Africa, but also for our students who are really improving their job chances. I've not even had one student who had not been asked during his interviews for a job about his experience with the Uganda project. What we're facing today as obstacles is, of course, that our professors and lecturers are actually, they're lacking experience. My generation, well, we have experience with the US or with Europe, but we don't have experience with Africa and the other regions. So I think this is the main focus we should have now, to create this kind of experience among the new generation. And then things will also improve. Whatever we do now is always focused on Europe, the US. And this is something that we need to change. And so I will also finish here at this point with an invitation to everyone who is listening. If you have some good ideas, projects you would address to me, please feel free. I would be very happy to do something jointly. And that's it. Thank you very much, Laura, and all the others for listening to me.
We had a question from the audience that was interested in hearing from our speakers regarding examples that you have of successful initiatives by the diaspora, and I'll try to modify it a little bit more, by the diaspora or from Africa in conjunction. Are there some key examples do you think offer some really great solutions or successes that we can share with the audience here today?
I guess there are examples, small examples, maybe not as much in focus as the big success stories that we might have from the US, but that's exactly the point. Well, cooperations between students coming from Africa, having their studies here in Europe, and then founding a company together with a German or a European partner and introducing that in Africa. I have in mind one particular case of Uganda, with electric motorcycles, but there are definitely hundreds of those examples. But well, that's exactly the point that I tried to point out before. I mean, we need to have these little stories, and this will encourage everyone, not only Africans, but also Europeans or from other continents to collaborate. And that's definitely the success story we should look for. But I mean, there was one comment in the chat. I have seen that someone said, "Well, why do African students not have the same chances to study in Europe?" More or less like that. Well, I think that the problem that African students in Europe have is mainly something different. They might have difficulties to adapt to the European system, or vice versa. I can see often that our administration at our university has difficulties of understanding that not everything is clear for someone who's coming from abroad. It's not an African problem, but it's whoever comes, is of course not adapted to the German system, and the administration is so narrow-minded that they don't see that. But what I receive as a feedback from our students, mainly is from the African students, is that they're disappointed once they have received their master degree, that it is very hard to get a job, at least in Germany. And many of them say, "Well, I really love to work here. I'm grateful that you offered me this opportunity to study here with low tuition fees, of course, but why don't you give me a chance to work here, at least for a while?" Yeah. And that's, I believe, is rather a problem here.